What does every grocery store aisle now have in common? Products that come in paper packaging. And we don't just mean the obvious ones like cereal boxes and juice cartons. From beauty products to boxed water, there are more opportunities to go papertarian than ever before. So why should you? Because paper comes from a renewable resource and can be recycled up to 7 times. Simply put, it's the smart choice for the environment. And it turns out, the easiest choice for you. Learn more at howlifeunfolds.com/papertarian.
You never want to find yourself out on the water fishing without the essentials. So it's best to always pack a Columbia PFG Solar Stream Elite hoodie to protect against the sun. I mean, it provides great protection and it's really breathable so you don't get hot. That's a win-win. Columbia PFG has a lot of great gear. So before you head out on the water, head over to Columbia.com/PFG to shop their performance fishing gear.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. 1 touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Let the 6-month sprint begin. I am John Schmeelk. He is Paul Dottino. Big Blue Kickoff Live. Our new time, 1 p.m. We'll be here until August 16th. Then all the practice times are TBA after that, folks. So once we have an idea when practice will be after the 16th, we'll let you know when the show is going to be. And I imagine during the regular season, we'll be back to 12:30. Because that's what works with Brian Dable's practice schedule and media schedule. Of course, Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We're going to be taking a lot of your calls today, 201-939-4513. No guest. So you getting ready for training camp, Paul. First practice coming our way on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Rookies have been here for a couple of days. Players report tomorrow to get their physicals, and then we're rocking and rolling, hopefully until at the very least mid-January, hopefully longer than that.
Yeah, I think the one really good thing for the players is that the weather has been a little bit better here recently. Folks, if you're from the New York metropolitan area, you know that we had a 2-week stretch that felt like we were in a microwave oven. It was hot. I know you had a little vacation going on, so maybe you didn't experience all of it.
No, it was hot. I was here for most of it.
But it was bad. I mean, it was bad. The humidity was stifling. The real field temperatures, many of the days was over 100 degrees. And I know that, to some people, maybe that's not a big deal. In other areas of the country, it was a lot worse. I understand all of that. But for us here, we're not really used to having that. And so for the players' sake, I'm glad that it's kind of subsided some. Because otherwise, I was saying the other day to my dad, they'd have the training staff out there IVing people, bringing guys inside. Coach wouldn't have enough guys to practice with because it was so brutal. I mean, seriously, it was really, really bad. So I'm glad that the weather has somewhat cooperated.
Yeah, I haven't looked at next week's weather yet, but this week we're supposed to be in the mid-80s for most of the week,
That's
which
really
is not
good.
bad. Where do I sign? I don't think it's supposed to be super humid either. So it should be a good week to start practice. Just a reminder to everybody, and Paul and Jonathan Casillas will get a little bit deeper into training camp previews tomorrow. But we're not going to have padded practice until I think we looked it up as next Monday, right?
Right.
And they're going to build up this week with shorts and then shells.
Mm-hmm.
They'll practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, day off, and then Monday will be the first padded practice. So
Right.
make sure you stay tuned to Giants.com, Giants mobile app, and all of our other coverage. We'll have all that for you right here. Big Blue Kickoff is going to be our main recap show here, guys. So we're going to do like a brief 40-second practice recap video every day, recapping what happened in practice. That'll go up on various social media platforms, whatever it's going to go up on.
Yeah, it should be YouTube.
YouTube Shorts,
maybe Twitter,
Reels, maybe, I don't know, whatever it's any of those short content-based apps it'll go up on. But then we'll Big Blue Kickoff every day. It'll be after media, after practice. We'll kind of give you the full lowdown in terms of what happened out there on the practice field. So every year, Paul and I and whoever else we're hosting with like to kind of give our X factors for the upcoming season. Paul and I will each go through offense and defense here, one on each side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll talk about any honorable mentions that just missed the cut for us. So, Paul, I will let you start us off wherever you want, offense or defense, whenever you are ready, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to go offense. And, I guess part of the issue with the question, which can really lead to a bunch of responses, is how do you define X factor? For me, I define X factor as a guy who is not necessarily expected to be a significant contributor. He's not one of your top-level guys, but he's someone who is going to wind up being one by the time the season is all said and done. He will overachieve, if you will. I suspect for me, on offense, I'm going to go Jalen Hyatt, because I think the Giants' top 3 receivers are Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Malik Neighbors. And Hyatt, to me, is wide receiver 4. And as wide receiver 4 coming into the season, I don't know how significant you think his stat line is expected to be. So I will say he winds up having a number of significant big plays in the Giants' revamped offense, which will include much more, in my opinion, of a complex passing game. And I think Hyatt's going to wind up being a significant factor in a number of games.
Okay, can I define what X factor actually means for you now?
Well, everybody can have their own. It's really not, it's not in concrete.
No, but the way you described like a surprise player, not a X factor.
Well, I've done X factor for years, and that's what I've always done. The X factor is the guy who was not expected to be one of the basic core guys. He's the X factor, the mystery man, so to speak.
No, X factor is the guy.
For you, it is.
Well, I can look up the definition of X factor online for you if you want.
Okay, go ahead. What do you got?
Well, I'm curious now. I want to see what X factor says online. The way I've always thought of X factor is the guy that's going to determine whether or not your season's good. And you don't necessarily know if he's going to be good or not. Like Andrew Thomas, you're pretty sure he's going to be really good at left tackle.
Well, then everybody should answer the quarterback, Daniel Jones. That's easy.
Well, yeah, but if you want to expand beyond that, we can get a little creative if you like.
Okay.
You don't know it's just doing that.
I would say if you want to define it a different way, which is how I've never defined it, but I'll go that way if you like.
Here we go. X factor definition: a variable in any given situation that could have the most significant impact on the outcome. So a variable by definition is something you're not sure about.
Well,
that can have a most significant impact on the outcome. So if you're sure about somebody, he could be important. He wouldn't be an X factor.
Right.
Because you're sure about that player.
Well, Jalen Hyatt, I'm not sure that he is one of the lead dogs in that room.
Yeah, but if he doesn't do a whole lot, you still have the other 3 guys sitting there, right?
That's true. All right, so if you're going to look at the overall picture and their impact in the final result, how about John Michael Schmitz?
That's a really good X factor. I like that.
Yeah, for that specific definition.
That's a great one.
John Michael Schmitz had some rookie struggles last year. He's an undersized center. He needs to be stronger. We know he's smart. We know he's got good technique, but he was overwhelmed at times last year, and at times he also wore down. John Michael Schmitz needs to be stronger and needs to step up in his second year. And as the guy in the heart of that line, that's a big deal. And so I'll go there.
No, I think that's a great one. And I think they shored up the 2 guard spots, both in the starting positions and depth-wise. So I think you'll be better there. So you have to be good up the middle. You have to keep the players out of Daniel Jones's lap. I agree. I think John Michael Schmitz's play will be a huge X factor this year.
I'm fine with that.
I think that's a really good one. So I'm going to go with, I'll go with the easy one, and then I do want to talk about the quarterback too. Evan Neal. It's huge because he not only impacts the protection at right tackle if he's doesn't play well enough and they have to pull him from that spot, and you move Illuminor, you're messing up 2 spots on the offensive line.
Right.
So I don't think it's any surprise. Remember in the Hard Knocks episode we talked about this. Joe Shane asked Brian Dable, what's our highest priority this offseason spot to improve on? Brian Dable?
Offensive line.
Offensive line. And both of us just picked 2 offensive linemen for X Factor. So that's the thing here, guys. Evan Neal, you need him to play well if he's the starter at right tackle. Needs to do a better job of protecting the right side from Daniel Jones. But if that's the problem. If he moves and he can't stay there, does he move inside? Is he good enough to play inside? Can he play inside yet? He hasn't played inside since his freshman year in college. We don't know the answer to that, right? Then Illuminor was at right tackle. I think you feel pretty good about him. But then what is it, Aaron Stinney? Who's the guy that slides into one of the guard spots then? And then you have 2 questions out there. So
it gets very sticky.
So I think those 2, are players that you do need to play better. And John Michael Schmitz as a center who's going to help a lot of the protections and stuff like that. That's important too. So I think those are the 2 guys on offense that, excluding the quarterback, that you could look at. I'll throw a couple other names out there before we. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Let me add to Neal.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Because
please.
Neal is not just the pass protection part of it, too. If the Giants are going to get that running game going, okay, they need to be able to get some of that outside zone stuff with him, and he's going to have to clip some guys off the edge. So it's not even just in pass protection. Evan Neal, he's got a big hulking frame. And although he looks slender and slim for what he is size-wise, the truth of the matter is he's got to knock guys off that edge.
Yeah.
He's got to.
And stay on his feet when he's on the move out there.
No question. No question. Because the Giants are not a power run game. That's not what they are. So he's going to have to make sure he takes care of stuff on that edge.
We'll see. With Carmen Brasilla, maybe they will do more.
We'll see.
Stuff. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't think so, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right, I'll throw a couple of names out there, too, that I think are important. And I know both of us have a lot of confidence in this player.
Yeah, go ahead.
But so maybe he wouldn't qualify as a variable, but he's a rookie. Malik Neighbors is wildly important to this team's success this year. Wildly.
Again, widespread definition of how you want to consider the question.
You could make that case. You feel good about him, but if he's not a true attention getter, number one wide receiver, what does this group of weapons look like? Losing your two best guys from last year in Barkley and Waller, what you left with two guys you like and you think have some ability in Robinson and Hyatt. You have Slayton, who has been a good, solid NFL wide receiver, but he's not a guy that's your number one and teams are going to game plan for. You really do need Malik Neighbors to be that guy early, which is asking a lot out of a rookie. Both of us believe, at least I think, I'm going to put words in your mouth, that he has the ability to do it, but he still has to actually go out there and do it.
Yeah. The Giants, look, we've talked about this time and time again for the last couple of years at how the young players on this team, whether they're first, second, or third-year players, must step up and be significant contributors. This is not new. The Giants have needed this now for a few years going.
Hi, Bob Papa.
And and in particular, Malik Neighbors, because of Saquon Barkley leaving via free agency, Malik Neighbors, in all likelihood, is the only man on this offense who has the potential to be a true headache player.
Yeah,
probably is.
The only other guys are someone you mentioned off the top. I think teams will have to worry about putting a guy over the top on Hyatt because of his speed, but that's still not being a guy you're game planning against. But even though he has the ability to get over the top.
Headache player. That's a very, very hard title to earn. And can Neighbors earn it? We think by his skill set, he absolutely has the ability to do so. Well, it's not enough for this Giants team in 2024 for him to show flashes of that. They actually need him to become a headache player sooner rather than later.
And then the obvious guy is Daniel Jones. Obviously, the health is first and foremost. He's got to stay on the field, something he's only done once out of the last 3 or 4 years, where he's played in did not miss a significant number of games in any one of those seasons. That's number one. And look, we saw him lead an effective offense 2 years ago, but a lot of that, to me, Paul, was with his legs. It was a lot of scrambling, right? It was a lot of running. And, if you look at his passing numbers in 2022, whether the gross numbers or the efficiency numbers, they were fine, but they weren't an upper echelon type of guy. Without Saquon here, with this being a run-first type of offense, we all knew when Brian Daboll got here, he doesn't want to run a run-first offense. He wants to run a pass-first offense. And I think we're going to see that now this year.
I think
so,
too.
The offensive line is better. They have all these wide receivers we've already talked about. This offense is going to be on Daniel Jones' shoulders. I'll quote Joe Shane from Hard Knocks. You don't pay a quarterback $40 million to hand the ball off to a $12 million running back. So you sure as hell don't pay a guy $40 million to hand it off to a $5 million running back.
Nope.
So they're going to put the ball in Daniel Jones' hands, and he's going to have the opportunity here to show if he can be the best version of what people think he can become, and be, frankly, better than he ever has been as an NFL quarterback. And maybe this is an unfair thing to put on the guy.
Oh, no.
But I think the expectations maybe a strong word, but I think the hope is that he has his best passing season as a pro. And it's, frankly, I would hope it's not close. But we'll have to see if he can do it, and that's why he is the ultimate X factor.
See, the challenge for Daniel Jones this season is that there can be no other extenuating circumstances. He has to produce at the necessary level, regardless of whatever else happens. There can be no more talk about the offensive line not being good enough. There can be no more talk about the wide receiver room being so banged up that he doesn't have targets, or he doesn't have a pass-catching tight end, or they can't run the ball at all. No, here's the problem. Because of Daniel Jones's contract and the way it's structured, that the Giants can digest a cap hit after this season and make a move in terms of what direction they want to go in. Daniel Jones, without any exterior circumstances, must have a good season. This is it. It's put-up time. There's no more room for him within the confines of the business development of this organization and the way the roster has been built. There is no more room to give him any more extra rope. He's got to have a good season, John. That's it.
And if this team's going to be successful, he has to have a good season.
That's it.
Look, we think the defense, with the improvements on the front seven, is going to be improved. We'll see about the secondary. We'll get into the defense in a second. But, look, Paul, if you want to make the playoffs, you got to average 24 or more points per game. Like, that's where it starts. You can't average 20 points a game and expect to be a playoff team in the NFL anymore.
Well, they averaged 22 2 years ago. They gave up 22 a game, and they got 22 a game. In fact, their total differential for the season, they were only minus 6 points for the whole season.
Correct. Which is why one of my points was that year why I thought there could be a little bit of a slide back.
So that's why, to be honest, at 9-7-1, they barely squeaked in, and you've got to have that as like the minimum bar. That's like the minimum bar.
And I don't think, and again, I think if you want to feel comfortable about having
24 is a much better
I
number.
think you want to get to 24.
Hey, I was hoping this past season that they could go from 22 to 24. That's what I was thinking about, that they were going to do. What'd they do? 16. Oh, not so good.
Yeah, had 6 wins. I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah. But look, on offense, those are the X factors that you have to keep an eye on here. Folks, don't forget the Giants Foundation will host a 5K Racing Kids Run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt. After the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at Giants.com/5K. All right, let's go to defense here, Paul. Do you want to lead off?
I did offense first, so why don't you take defense?
Okay, that's a good one. If I was to put one X factor on defense, I'd have to make it Cordell Flott. I think it's a guy that you're not sure what you're going to get out of him at corner. He's a guy you can slide inside or outside if you have to. I think they prefer to keep him outside at this point, and that's what the plan is. But he's the one guy, that slot spot could be any one of 3 or 4 guys. So I can't even pick on one X factor there because there's nobody that's really an incumbent in my head, right? So to me, it has to be Cordell Flott. They need him to be a solid corner this year in this defensive system, which does require you to cover for a little bit more because there's going to be less blitzing under Shane Bowen than there was under Wink Martindale. You hope you get a little bit more pressure naturally with 4 because of the addition of Brian Burns. But to me, I think it starts with Cordell Flott, where if there's a weakness in this Giants defense, and again, they talked about in Hard Knocks, you get Brian Burns, you're not getting a corner, right? All the money went to Burns.
Right.
So Cordell Flott's got to play well, and he's got to stay healthy. So I'll go with Cordell Flott as my first guy.
And that makes absolute perfect sense. I think you just mentioned a second ago the slot. We don't even know who the slot guy is. We think it's going to be Drew Phillips. When they drafted him, they said he's going to be a guy who gets the shot.
We hope he can earn that spot.
But we don't know.
No, we don't.
So I don't have an answer for you there because that guy is right now a big question mark.
I agree.
He's like the Riddler.
I'm with you.
So I don't have an answer for the slot guy, but the slot guy would be my answer.
And by the way,
if I had one.
If an X factor for your team is a rookie third-round pick, you have not put your team in a good position to succeed. Because asking a lot from a rookie that's asking a lot from a rookie third-round pick to be an X factor.
It is, but here's the trouble. If you're relying on Shane Bowen to get a lot of heat with his front 4, which is what his defenses are based on, well, what are the 2 things that a quarterback always does when he gets heat? He looks for his slot receiver and he looks for his tight end. Those are the top 2 priorities, okay, for hot reads. Well, if the slot guy doesn't hold up, well, what have you done?
No, I'm with you.
You've taken your advantage of the pass rush and you've minimized it.
The easiest way to get the ball out quick is to the guys that play inside.
That's it.
100%.
That's it.
You're with
so it's Mr. Slot for me would be my X factor, Mr. Slot. If I can go to the other meaning of X factor, which I have always kind of gone with,
sure.
but it's not the one
that's
legit. I kind of think Brian Burns is a big deal. because Brian Burns, how he fits into this defense, he has to be. I want to make something very clear. When Brandon Brown talked about Brian Burns in the Hard Knocks clip, he said, you don't get premier pass rushers in their prime, get a shot at getting those guys when they're good character guys, they're good leaders, and they still have a lot more going for them. The Giants making this deal for Brian Burns and then signing him to a very expensive contract, they believe that the best is yet to come from him. They don't want the Brian Burns they saw in Carolina. They think there's more.
Yeah, look.
They think he can be dominant and a significant impact player. He can't just be, look, Azeez Ojulari had 8 sacks his rookie year. They don't need that out of Brian Burns.
No, they need 12.
Bingo.
Right.
Bingo. And if Brian Burns has 12 and a half sacks and 25 quarterback hits, now he's a significant impact player, which goes to your definition or my definition, I guess, of X, or your definition of X, because he can have an impact on wins and losses if he does that.
See, I feel confident enough about him, I wouldn't consider him a variable. And maybe that's false confidence because he's only had double-digit sacks once in his career. So I understand why you would say that 100%.
He needs to be better.
So I'm gonna put that on Kayvon Thibodeau a little bit because I know he had a big double-digit sack year last year. But if you look at the underlying pressure numbers, they're actually almost identical to what he had as a rookie when he had fewer than half the sacks he had last year.
4.
Right.
And then 11 and a half.
And his pressure numbers were literally almost exactly the same.
He just finished a little bit more.
Right. And we know from year to year, that can be very, very up and down.
Look at Leonard Williams.
Very consistent.
We saw that firsthand.
Dexter Lawrence 2 years ago.
Dexter Lawrence too.
Same thing.
Same thing.
But pressure numbers are what kind of defines how consistent you are. So I think with Burns and Dex probably drawing most of the attention, can Kayvon Thibodeau consistently win against the one blocker he's probably going to see on most ends?
Ooh. You think they will favor blocking Burns over Tibbs?
If I was an offensive coordinator, 9 times out of 10.
I don't know yet. I need to see how Burns fits into this system. And quite frankly, with Bowen as the new defensive coordinator, I want to see how all those guys react to the new system. Because now it's a front four. Remember, it's a lot less blitzing. So now how do those guys adjust to their new responsibilities?
Now, teams might also say, well, we have a weak spot here, so we're going to help this player no matter who's lined up over there.
No doubt.
That might be a situation too, right? But I'm gonna say Kayvon Thibodeau here. I think if he can take another step, improve that pressure rate, and then you have 2 guys that are, looking nice for double-digit sacks every year with Dex in the middle. Now that's a defensive front. So that to me, Kayvon has the ability, if he takes a step, to bring this defense even to a higher level than I think we all think it could be if he can become an all-pro caliber player.
If that happens, I'll give you another layer to what you just said. If that happens and this front four gets enough heat to cause havoc, not only is Mr. Slot going to be a huge, huge issue for the Giants that they're going to have to hold up there, but the guy who takes maybe that stand-up tight end, which is Isaiah Simmons. Isaiah Simmons now, in all likelihood, is going to be that monster back.
Early down slot player.
Who is going to take the stand-up tight end, which is the other favorite target other than the slot receiver in a pressurized situation. So now Isaiah Simmons becomes a huge factor.
The only other guy I'll throw out there, if you're going to go with Mr. Slot, I'm going to go with Mr. 3 technique.
Okay.
Another guy where
we don't know who it is.
3 or 4 guys that are in there, and you and JC will do more training camp battle stuff tomorrow. So I don't want to spend too much time on breaking down the players. But that's another spot where you got to figure out who your other pass rusher is going to be, especially on passing downs. And who knows? I think when all said and done, Paul, I think you're going to have on 3rd and longs, even maybe 2nd and longs, depending on the time of the game and what the score is. It's going to be Dex, Burns, Thibodeau, Ojulari. And those are going to be your 4 pass rushers.
Absolutely.
And they can rotate who's at the 3 technique and who's outside and that sort of stuff. So that's the other spot that I think could be really important to define the season. Can they find somebody to kind of play that 3 tech spot? But I think we have some good names there that could really impact whether or not the Giants play well this year. 201-939-4513. We have one caller on hold. That means we do have a couple of open lines here, folks. So if you want to give us a call, I know we're all kind of slowly getting back into football mode here. We got a new time, 1 p.m. I get it. But if you want to get in, talk some training camp, look ahead. The time is now 201-939-4513. Don't forget, folks, the Giants Huddle podcast features long-form interviews with Giants players, coaches, front office personnel, you name it. Check it out. It's the best analyst covering Big Blue in the NFL. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform, giants.com/podcast, or go to the Giants mobile app, or just search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform. Leave that 5-star positive review. Right now up there, I believe we put the Marcus Kuhn interview that Paul did last week. So that's up there in the Giants Huddle podcast. We'll have our next 10 players in the Giants 100 coming up tomorrow.
Yep.
Then we'll have our Hard Knocks reaction the following day. And then our poor safeties position series thing, which we wanted to get done before camp, got pushed to Thursday because, frankly, we ran out of days. So that'll be hitting on Thursday. And we're going to try to do 3, depending on the week, maybe 4 huddles a week over the course of the preseason. We'll aim for 3, but if we happen to get people coming through, national reporters, we have a bunch of alumni that Paul's going to try to talk to over the course of the next few weeks. So we'll have all that in the Giants Huddle podcast. Make sure you check it out. And make sure if you haven't, folks, a good way to get tuned up and ready to go for the season, just go back to the archives and listen to all the positional interviews that we did. We have position by position, all the major players at those positions, spare maybe 1 or 2 guys we didn't manage to get, and they really lay down what to look for from those players and that position group over the course of the year. So go check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast. All right, we have open lines, folks, 201-939-4513. Let's go to Len in Columbia, Maryland. He will lead us off today. Len, what's going on?
Hey, guys.
Hi, Len.
How you doing?
We're good.
Good. Well, it took me a couple of minutes to get motivated to call in, but I decided I was going to pick up the phone because I thought you guys were being very realistic this morning. I thought you were a very realistic assessment of where they are, or to put it another way, and this might sound a little cold, but there is a reason where most of the so-called experts out there have us like the 30th or the 31st or even the 32nd roster in this league and have us finishing last in the East.
Yeah, Len, and you know why, by the way? The reason is why, for the Giants to be good this year, they need players that have not shown before they can be very good consistently to be good. So that they have a bunch of prove-it players on this team that need to have prove-it years, and that's why.
Right. I was not surprised to see these so-called experts have us ranked that way for exactly the same reason that you just mentioned, John. We're going to need a lot of people to really kind of play up above where we've seen them play before. And some of the guys you're mentioning, I'm not sure they're going to be able to do this. The other thing is it seems like there's a lot of newness. I mean, we got a lot of new assistant coaches and so forth. A lot of newness here, including a lot of new players. Who are the core guys? I mean, who can we count on?
Oh, I think you do have a pretty nice set on defense, Len. You got Dexter, you got Burns, you got Deonte Banks. I think I will put him in that core. I would put Okereke in that core. So I think defense, where frankly they've put a lot of their resources in, right? Burns a lot of resources, Dexter a lot of resources, Thibodeau a lot of resources, Okereke a lot of resources, Banks a lot of resources. So I think on defense you have what's forming into a pretty good core.
Yes, I think you've got. I think you've mentioned. I don't know if you got the 5, but I think you mentioned at least 4. So I think there are more on defense than there are on offense, and I think you got the right guys. But Shifto, I know you were going to head toward offense. Where are we? Where do you think the core guys are on offense?
I mean, I think it's. I mean, look, I think for this year, Daniel Jones is a core guy because the quarterback's always a core guy. But to Paul's point, beyond this year, we just don't know what's happening yet, right? So you can even push him aside if you want. I think you hope that John Michael Schmitz becomes a core guy. Did not show he was a core guy last year.
John.
So you have. I'm real serious to that. I think the only true core guy in offense that's proven it is Andrew Thomas, and that's it.
There we go. What I was going
to say. And to be honest, hold on, Darius Slayton. He's been a staple for this team now. I know he had 2 years ago he was kind of lost for a little while in the rotation, but his numbers, he's one of like only 6 players in the league who over the last 5 years has averaged over 15 yards a catch. Darius Slayton has been a consistent quality performer. Now, he's not a top shelf receiver. He's another notch down, but he's a quality performer.
Okay, John, let me explain the reason why I was trying to interrupt you.
That's okay.
When you were talking about John Michaels, was because I think you used the word hope. I don't want to hope. I want some guys. I just want to know who we're counting on. And it looks like if you put the two sides of the ball together. Now, if you want to count Graham Gano as a core guy, I mean it's less than 10 players, isn't it, John? Paul?
Len, let me ask you a question. Did you know for sure that Maurice Carthen was going to be what he was, and Bart Oates was going to be what he was, and Kareem McKenzie was going to be what he was when they got here? You didn't know. They had to go out there and prove it.
And Len, this is one of the youngest teams in the league, Len. When you're going to throw out a lot of young players, this is what you're going to get.
That's it. You got to show me. You got to go out and prove it. And if you don't give those guys a chance to prove it, they'll never be any good. Or they'll wind up leaving, and you won't know what they were until they land on another team. So at some point, they got to play.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to reluctantly go along with you guys in putting Daniel on that list. And John's reason was a good one, because you always have to put the quarterback on that list. So I'm going to go along with Daniel, but. Yeah, this is the year for Daniel. I mean, it's put up now, or it's going to be over. And let me say something about Schmitz and Neal. I keep thinking if both of those guys fail, that's catastrophic. I mean,
both?
Wow.
No, Len, look, if both those guys don't work out, and I don't think that's going to be the case, but in your theoretical world here, that would set the organization back a ways.
It would be monumental.
Yeah.
That would be horrible.
Yeah. No, I don't want this to be the end of the conversation unless you have to move on.
No, go ahead. Finish up.
I understand that. I just want you to know I'm as optimistic as ever at the beginning of the season. But I'm beginning to understand. I mean, listening to your conversation at the beginning and listening to the so-called experts evaluate the roster, I can see why we're a little, worried about what's coming down the pike here. I mean, Neighbors has to be big time. I hate to put it in these terms, but he just has to be big time.
Well, Len, how about this? Here's what I'm going to throw at you, all right?
Yeah.
Over the past 4 drafts, all right? Yeah. Here's who the Giants have picked on day 1 and 2 in those drafts, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Kadarius Toney, Azeez Ojulari, Aaron Robinson, not great. Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Azudu, Cordell Flott. A lot of guys on that list that the Giants certainly need to play well this year. Following year, Deonte Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Jalen Hyatt. And then this year, Malik Neighbors, Tyler Nubin, Andrew Phillips. Len, the reason we spend as much time on the show on the draft as we do is because drafting successfully and developing good players and having good players on rookie contracts is the key to every NFL team being successful. The Giants need that group of players who are your premium draft picks on day 1 and 2 to be good, successful NFL players if the Giants want to be a good football team. I could go through 31 other NFL football teams. And if you list their last 3 or 4 drafts and the players aren't any good, I hate to tell you, unless they have a Patrick Mahomes at quarterback or Josh Allen or whatever, that team's not going to be very good either. So, and now we're going to find out. We're going to find out if these players that got drafted high, and I have confidence in a lot of those guys. I think they're good young men. I think they're good football players. They need to do it this year. These are the guys that need to elevate this team back to a level where you're competing for a playoff spot.
And to enhance what John is saying, remember when Joe Schoen got here, he was thrilled that in his first draft, he had 11 draft picks. He had a slew of them, and I know a lot of them were on the back end, but he was so happy to be able to scout and to be able to obtain a bunch of new-blooded guys.
And by the way, 2 of those guys on
a big deal.
Bellinger and McFadden, those are 2 guys that have proven to be solid NFL players in that first draft.
Exactly. And so that's why, Joe Schoen values draft picks immeasurably highly.
He said he doesn't want to build in free agents. He wants to go through the draft. Go ahead, Len. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
Yeah. No. What I was going to say was, as you were running through those names, That first draft, particularly that second day, John, I know that was the weekend I think your wife had the baby. And we talked Tuesday after the draft.
That was, Len, by the way.
You mentioned that
Len,
you had actually thought of me on day 2.
You have a good memory, Len, because I got the phone call during the Wan'Dale Robinson press conference on Friday night, and I had to drive my wife to the hospital. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, and boy, but that, Thibs and Neal, Flott, Uzudu, Wan'Dale. Wow, that was a tough first draft.
Well, we don't know yet, Len. We don't know yet. We got to see. Azudu's missed a ton of time with injuries.
Even with Thibs.
Yes.
Even with Thibs. I want him to be good like everybody else, but I mean, geez, he was the 5th pick in the draft, John. By now, I mean,
Second season, 11.5 sacks. And I know, again, we talk about how sacks are not the only thing. Kayvon Thibodeau is a player. Len, I don't know what you've been watching. He's a player.
No. Paul, he's just not the kind where I thought he was going to be at this point.
Now, Len,
I mean, he's not a pro. He had 11.5 sacks. He's not a Pro Bowl player.
Wait, the Giants are playing from behind like 85% of the
Now,
time.
Len. If your point is that he's not Nick Bosa, yes,
fine,
no argument there.
He's not Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
Great.
And 2 picks later, we picked Evan. I mean, and look where we are.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with Thibodeau.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying in terms of. I mean, you had the 5th and the 7th pick in the draft. I would have thought there would be somebody who is of star quality today. It sounds like I like Tibbs, but he's just not where I thought he was going to be, guys.
No, fair enough.
I mean,
holy smokes, Len! You talk about him like he's Bobby Abrams.
Len,
please.
No, I didn't know. Well,
he's not Bobby Abrams, for God's sakes.
Does he play the run well, Paul?
Yes. He sure does. He holds the edge a lot better than people give him credit for. He's really good at it.
There you go. Okay. You see something that a lot of people don't see because you just said it. There are a lot of people who don't give him credit for it. I'm not saying he's not that he's a bad run protector. That's not where I'm going. It's just with the 5th pick in the draft, I just thought it was going to be a little stronger. Now maybe this is the year, 4th year if I counted right.
No, 3rd. He's been here 2 years.
Maybe this is, and with Burns on the other side, this could be pretty darn exciting.
Len, there was a reason, and thank you very much for the call, that I listed him as one of my X factors. Yeah, that's why. And by the way, if you look at that draft, this wasn't this year's draft in terms of star power.
No.
If Sauce Gardner was available, the Giants were probably going to pick Sauce Gardner. Like we talked about that. He went right before they picked. Ekwonu has not worked out.
No.
Drake London's been good, but I would say he's the same level of as a wide receiver as Thibodeau's been a defensive lineman. Similar players, different position, but production-wise, both good players, but not Pro Bowl, All-Pro yet, but good players. Right? Garrett Wilson, who I love Garrett Wilson. He turned out to be really good. Charles Cross has been okay. Jamison Williams, we know what's going on with him. Jordan Davis hasn't really worked out. Kenyon Green's been a disaster. Jahan Dotson has not been great. Zion Johnson has not been great. Treylon Burks has not been great. The only guys, and I'm up to pick 19 here, Trevor Penning has been a disaster. Kenny Pickett has been terrible. So that's the top 20 picks. In the top 20 picks here, guys, the only guys that have been legitimately Pro Bowl caliber players in the first 20 picks of that draft and has been Aiden Hutchinson. All right? I wouldn't put Stingley and Trayvon Walker in that conversation.
No, nor would I.
They've been good, but they have not been stars.
Agreed.
So I'd put Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Kyle Hamilton.
I'd go there too.
5 out of 20.
Okay, but hold on. These guys have only had 2 years. And
Correct.
we always say the 3rd year is the breakout year, right?
But my point is that if you look at it,
breakout.
the next pass rusher after Thibodeau. Holy cow.
Oh, he is.
George Karlaftis at pick 30.
Yeah. By far, Thibodeau was the best pass rusher in this draft.
Correct.
By far.
Well, Aiden Hutchinson. You forgot about him.
Correct. I'm sorry.
Forgot about Hutchinson.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's okay. I did.
201-939-4513. Bill in Levittown wants to talk some Hard Knocks. Hi, Bill.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're
First time caller. Good to speak with you guys.
Thanks for calling in, Bill. What do you got?
Yeah, just a quick one on Hard Knocks. First of all, I think it's been fantastic from a fan perspective.
Agreed.
But I don't. It's been my favorite Hard Knocks, but I don't know. Looking back now, because I think there's a huge disconnect between the kind of the Giant fan specific perspective versus, I guess, the national media, where you're taking in a couple snippets here and there. Which is kind of surprising, especially with the Saquon stuff, because generally everyone's against paying a running back late. But I don't understand, I guess down the road why they were so against the training camp version, but have shown so much here, especially with the Saquon call, which I thought was a little much, because if he has a gigantic year this year and the Giants struggle, the heat's going to be on even more.
Yeah, but Bill, honestly, nothing about that Saquon call surprised me. That's honestly kind of how, and I didn't know, no one told me this. That's kind of how I thought they handled it, to be honest with you. What did you think was controversial about the Saquon call?
Just showing it, to be honest with you, okay. I guess. I guess because it's kind of, in my opinion, I guess Shane would. I thought Joe was just definitely done with him. But I guess Saquon's demeanor and stuff, you could kind of tell he was probably thought he was done with it. Obviously, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But
no, Bill, I will say this: Bill, I think you're right. I think it did seem to me that the negotiation from the prior season had worn on both sides.
I agree with you.
And you could tell Joe even said it. I forget what media thing he said it at. Right. He said it some media thing where we don't want to go through this again with the franchise tag. Not that you don't bring him back because you want to avoid it, but even Saquon, you could tell. I think the whole back and forth of last year with the tag really did wear on both sides a little bit, to be honest with you.
I think there are two things, and I don't really want.
No, Bill, you're here. We have you. Stay with us.
I don't really want to do this, but I think it's important since you brought it up, and I don't know that we could avoid it. The two things about the Saquon Barkley saga that came out in Hard Knocks that I think are extremely important is when Joe Shane's on the phone and he's basically saying to Barkley about, hey, make sure you're going to give us a call back. And Barkley just says, you know what I mean about wanting to be here. But Barkley doesn't say it. He doesn't come out and say it.
The same way
he hedges.
The same way his agent hedged later.
His agent hedges later. Now, we don't hear it. We don't hear it. But because for some reason that part of the conversation doesn't come on the microphone, but you hear Joe Shane relay the conversation with the agent to John Mara and says he hems and haws. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now what we know to be true, the curtains pulled back, is that Barkley was not all in on the Giants, and he was not going to give them a hometown discount.
And I don't think the Giants were weren't all in on Barkley.
The Giants were not all in to give him the keys to Fort Knox.
Right.
Okay, fine, no problem.
That's business.
But now
that's not personal. That's business.
And then, if you continue to watch the show, I think this is very significant. And people even said to me, "Well, what happened there with the Giants? Barkley gave him a chance." No, wait a minute. Watch the show. It's free agent day, and Shane in the clip says, "I better check in on Barkley." Joe actually makes the call to the agent and says, okay, hey, good day to be at Berry. What's going on? So the agent, nor Barkley, did call the Giants back, which, of course, just further enhances why they did not make that promise and why they hemmed and hawed.
Yeah,
because they were being wishy-washy.
Yeah, and then, Bill, the final thing I'll say on this, and then please continue with your point, that Joe Shane made this point at least once over the course of the series, and he said it at a press conference last year too, and I think this is the bottom line with how the Giants decide to do this. They have research that shows after age 27, running backs decline quickly. And I think with the money they offered Barkley last year on the long-term extension, he's a year younger. You feel like you're going to get another year out of the contract. To come back with that same contract this year when he's a year older, when maybe 2 years of the contract are going to be bad instead of one, it just makes you a lot more hesitant when you look at the age of the player, the mileage on the tires, and how much you're going to be willing to give him.
And another sprained ankle in 23,
Correct.
Too.
So that's how I look at it, Bill.
And by the way, even though Singletary's 27, he's shown durability. The guy never misses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I was okay moving on with Barkley. I'd rather allocate the resources elsewhere. I guess it's more showing it, and then what could possibly happen, and who knows what will happen. But also, they just the day-to-day stuff, which I guess in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. But Saquon's going to do an interview, I guess, that's going to come out tomorrow about the whole process and showing it. And I would have rather not. And it's kind of the same thing, I guess, with the DJ stuff. I'm very, very surprised how they would say, just showing that stuff, going to the Patriots, looking for the third pick.
Well, Bill, I'm curious because
up with Daniels.
Yeah, you hit it, Bill. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, just basically admitting that they want to move on, kind of after a year after, and it kind of just
not really
opens itself up.
Yeah. See, I don't think Bill
not
is
really.
necessarily we want to move on. I think it's we see a guy that we think is really good, and we might want to go and get him to be here too. I think that's how you look at it, right? And I think I apologize for jumping on you. I am fascinated when the show comes out tomorrow, how much detail they go into the efforts to trade up. I am fascinated to see how they approach that, because I agree that can be delicate, right? With, you have a guy in-house that you wanted, that you believe in, you just started, you just paid him. I'm really curious how they deal with that on the show. And that's, of all the things for this whole series, this episode, this is the one I was looking forward to the most. I kind of figured what the free agent thing was going to be. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a huge surprise to me, though I think the Brian Burns negotiation was interesting.
That was cool for me.
But how they approach this potential trade up with the draft, this is what I've been waiting for like 6 months since I knew this thing was happening. I cannot wait to see how they talk about this and how they handle it. I cannot wait.
I think the one thing I caution you, caller, about, and then I'll let you finish, and I apologize, but there's so much here to unpack in this phone call. I think the important thing to remember is that there is so much footage, so many days, weeks, and months that goes into these little 45-minute episodes that the producers are doing their best to try to weave it together so that there is some type of storyline and there's some type of framework.
It's literally a month an episode.
That's what it is. An absolute marathon of tape that they've got to go through to give you your little television show. So I laugh. I literally laugh. I'm almost in pain on the floor laughing at how hard every fan and every media person is dissecting these little snippets, these little 10-second snippets, these little phrases, and, that's what that means. It's a 15-second snippet out of 1 month worth of film. Are you kidding me? It's a joke. It's hysterical.
No, and I agree with you, Paul, actually, because you're taking a snippet here, a snippet there, and the national media, and I think most Giant fans I speak to kind of think it's pretty well-run operation, at least if people, my friends who've watched the show. But then you see the national perspective, and I guess they take a snippet here or there where maybe they say one thing or the other thing, and they kind of run with it.
Well, Bill, I'll be honest. I have not paid attention to the national reaction. What's been like the negative national reaction to the show? Just out of curiosity, I haven't seen it.
I think a lot of it's the Saquon. They should have paid their best player Saquon, and which is surprising to me because generally
that is surprising.
Most people are against paying a running back. I know Michael Lombardi, John Middlecoff, who are front office people, have criticized as well. But I from a Giant fan perspective, I think it's everything Joe Shane has kind of done. I've looked back and go, it's made logical sense. The Waller trade, drafting Evan Neal, the DJ contract has made logical sense to me. Now it's going to be those are ones I guess that haven't been executed, I guess, but everything he's done kind of has made sense. So from my perspective, I think it's a pretty good operation, and I kind of like what I'm seeing. But I guess like Paul was talking about, you get a snippet here, a snippet there, and a quote maybe, and people kind of try to run with it. But and I guess it's kind of the questions, and Saquon's going to do an interview tomorrow, and then Daniel's going to have to answer questions on it. I didn't know. I see the training camp version. I'm like, they're looking at a 7th rounder who wants to make the team. Like, this is so much in depth with so many questions, and it's been, from a Giant fan perspective, it's fantastic. I just don't know how it helps, I guess. But that's just my opinion, and go from there. But yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
I appreciate the call. Yep. Thanks again. Take care.
Appreciate it, man. You too. I think my guess is that they don't want when football's being played cameras and mics to interfere with the football operation, which is what the training camp episode is.
And we've seen that in the past with other teams.
They feel like having a camera in a couple of offices, and I don't think the only camera we've seen is in. Have we seen another office with a camera besides Joe Shane? I don't think so,
No.
right? We haven't seen a camera anywhere else, Pearson, have we?
Maybe just the scouting department.
Oh, yeah, they have the one camera in the pro personnel room where they have the 4 scouts sitting in the room.
In
So
the
that's a good
draft
one.
room,
And
they
the
have a
draft
camera.
room. So those would be
Yeah.
the 3 spots where I think we've seen robotic cameras so far, and they probably just think it's less of a distraction.
And the combine, too.
And at the combine in the office. So they probably think it's just
Right,
less
the
of a
suite.
distraction for them to do it with that. And do you say, I don't know how it helps? Well, the NFL is going to make all the teams do hard knocks. So,
Right.
I mean, if the Giants could wave a wand and never have to do hard knocks, would they? I think they probably would. But I think they thought this was the best way to show your process. And I agree with you. What you want to see from these types of shows, and I saw a couple national people, it doesn't look like the Giants, like the way they evaluate their free agents was very in-depth. I'm like, guys, they have to reduce this thing to like 2 minutes. They're not going to show Joe Shane with the analytics department breaking down the details of how much to pay these guys and things like that. Anyway, but to your point earlier, I think there's a process that makes sense. The theories behind their moves make sense. And I think I like the way they kind of go about things. Now, does that mean every pick is going to be right and every pick is going to work out? You could have a great process and do things the right way and picks don't work out. Like that's the way that's why the NFL draft's so hard, right? You could do everything the right way and it's still not going to work out for you. Every great team and general manager has misses here and there. I mean, they all do. So I'm with Bill. I think I pretty much agree with everything he said.
The one interesting dynamic, and Joe Shane mentioned this on the Peter Schrager Hard Knocks pod that is.
I have not listened to that yet.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it with Joe, and Joe is absolutely right. The dynamic of the training camp show and the in-season show is different than the off-season program because you have the element of time. Everything that we're seeing in this training camp show has already played out. Okay? It's already played out.
That's a good point.
Now, in season and during training camp, that's actually happening as the week is unfolding.
There's only like a 3 or 4 day delay.
That's it.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's the potential for distractions or stuff to come out that could impact you in the present tense.
That's a great, I didn't even think about it that way. That's a good point.
In this case, all those storylines have already played out. There's nothing anybody can do about those storylines now. They're done. They're in the book. It's already in the rearview mirror of the front office. It's buried. So any distractions that come out now, it's like, well, that's already done. We've passed that milepost about 10 minutes ago.
No, I'm with you, Paul. All right, let's wrap things up today with Scott in New Mexico. Scott, what's going on?
Hi, guys. How are you today?
We're doing great.
First thing, I wasn't going to speak about it, but in regards to the Hard Knocks, I just don't know why anyone just can't accept the fact that Saquon Barkley, from that infamous telephone conversation, didn't appear that he wanted to play for the Giants anymore.
No, I think, look, Scott, I think Saquon would have been thrilled to play for the Giants if they would have paid him what he wanted to be paid.
He wanted the contract. That's what it comes down to.
And I don't blame him.
And every player has that right.
He's only going to have one chance to be a free agent in his prime, and he wants to maximize his dollar value. God bless him. I don't blame him for that.
Right.
And does it suck he went to the Eagles? Sure. But he's from Pennsylvania. I don't blame him. This is business. The Giants made the decision they had to make. Saquon made the decision they had to make. And look, that's the way it goes sometimes with free agency. It happens.
Most players will take the most money when they get offered it. And I think the thing that rubs a lot of Giants fans the wrong way, and I think this
Unless
is fair
you're Jalen
too.
Brunson.
Well, there you go. that's really what I want to say is that you've got Brunson taking the hometown discount with the Knicks because he wants to be here and he wants to build something really cool. And you have a guy like Saquon Barkley who just decided, you know what? I want the most money.
Here's the difference.
Both guys have a right to do that.
Here's the difference,
They
though.
do.
Brunson's career is going to be longer because he's an NBA player, not
No
an
doubt.
NFL player, and he's already made a lot more money than Barkley has.
Understood.
So,
And there's a really good
situation.
team around him, right? Like, he already had pieces
Sure.
around
Well, that's
him.
true. Yeah, he thinks he can win a championship in quickly here. That's
The
correct.
point being that both players have a right to go in
Beat those
either
Celtics.
direction.
Sure.
But my issue, to be frank with you, with Barkley was that he preached all this Giant stuff the loyalty, lifetime Giant, want to be in the Ring of Honor, want to be the one who helps turn this around. My issue is he could have been less effusive in all of his Giant talk for the last year or so. And he really gave, and look, I bought it at face value. I thought he was going to give them a hometown discount because I thought he was all in here.
I didn't think he was going to do that.
I bought it. And the Giants obviously kind of did too because they thought realistically they could get him for a number which was never going to happen
to me,
because he was taking the highest bidder.
I thought Barkley loving the Giants, it was going to come down to if the Giants give the same offer as somebody else, he would choose the Giants. But if somebody else gave more, especially if it was significantly more...
Well, you know what? I'm not so sure that's true anymore. After what I've heard from him, I think even if they matched it, he may not have gone because when Joe challenged the agent on the phone and says, if we do 12.5 average salary per year and blah, blah, blah with guarantees, you're telling me if I do that, he's staying and the agent would not go for it.
Maybe the agent thought the other team would go even higher.
Well, the Giants were not going to get into a bidding war. They were not going to do it.
Well,
they were not going to be used as leverage. They were just not.
Part of the problem, as I see it, they were devaluing Saquon because of his age and the amount of yardage he was going to get. But I think
because of his injury history more than anything else.
Right,
yeah,
but it's a myth. And the reason I say it's a myth, if you just take one of the Giants that's famous, like Tiki Barber, in 2005 and 2006, those were probably his two best years. He had over 1,000 yards in each.
No, Scott, there are always exceptions, Scott, but you got to play the odds.
But there's a ton of exceptions. Is what I'm
not a
getting
running
at.
back. There's not. No, there.
Yeah, there is.
How many running backs get better as they get older, Scott?
Tiki was
Dunn
really
got better. There's a lot of guys that did.
Tiki was also extremely durable because early in his career they didn't use him that much.
Bingo.
Remember, he was a kick returner and he was a third down back. So he wasn't getting beaten on like he did his last few years, and that's why he decided to stop, and he's got a right to do that. Had Tiki played one more year, he was going to the Hall of Fame. I'm telling you that right now, unequivocally.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame anyway.
You could absolutely make that case, but I think the voters would have been overwhelmingly eager to put him in had he gone one more year.
Yeah, but Scott, if you look at the guys that, I can look up the leading rusher for every year over the past 15 years. Most of these guys, they don't just get, a lot of these guys, it's not every one of them, they don't slowly get worse. Like Priest Holmes, Jamal Charles, who is the, Todd Gurley. Like, these guys are the best running back in the league, and then the next year, they're getting cut. And they're terrible.
Right.
So they're trying to avoid that.
Look at Ezekiel
Elliott. The only
Elliott.
point I'm making, John, is it can go both ways. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about.
Okay, sorry
I want to go on to my main points.
Sure.
But, since you're running out of time. In your conversation, I agreed with virtually most of the things you said, and especially with Paul's information in regards to Darius Slayton, because I think he's been underwhelmed in use because of the situation with the offensive line. But be that as it may, I know Malik Neighbors is going to get double-teamed. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be doing that. And as I always believe the offensive line is the most important issue. I do believe that Daniel Jones will be the X factor. But I wanted to talk about Brian Burns and his importance to the team. Would you say it's fair that Brian Burns' importance to the team is as important as Micah Parsons' importance is to the Dallas Cowboys? And do you feel that he needs to show the same? Maybe, obviously, they played with Micah. He plays all over the place, and Brian's going to play basically an edge rusher. So I don't know if you can equate them the same. But do you feel they're in the same category of players and the same importance to the team? And I feel, more importantly, that the offense is the most important cog to the Giants' season. And again, from my perspective, the offensive line is the X factor. But since, again, you're short on time and need to go, I figured I'll take all your answers off the air.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks again, guys.
Yes, offensive line X factor for the offense. I think Paul and I both agree with that, considering our individuals were there.
Forever.
Look, Brian Burns has not proven to be as good of a player as Micah Parsons.
Nope.
But is he as important to the team as the team's number one edge rusher? Yeah, probably. Like, in terms of importance to the team, I mean, you could argue Micah might even be a little bit more important to Dallas just because they don't have a defensive tackle like Dexter Lawrence that can push the pocket. So they really, like, if it's not Micah, DeMarcus Lawrence is a good player, but put him and Kayvon on the same level as a pass rusher. You could probably do that, right?
Dallas doesn't have a Bobby Okereke at middle linebacker either.
Right. So I think maybe Micah is maybe even more important to what Dallas does up front than what Burns does. But, look, Burns is very important.
Burns and Thibodeau both have to become headache players in unison for the Giants defense to be a top 10 defense. That's it. It's very simple for me. I think they're a top half defense right now just on pure talent.
Well, I think the secondary we have a lot of questions about. I'm not willing to say that.
I love the front seven.
That's great.
I love the front seven, and I think it's good enough to tell me that they can be in the top 15 without much trepidation. But if you want to be a top 10 defense, those two edge rushers have to both become headache players. They've got to be dominant. And I'm not even talking LT and Banks, okay, because that's going way out of bounds. But they got to be dominant. They've got to both be headache players where offensive coordinators are saying, holy crap, I got to deal with Dexter Lawrence. I got to deal with Tibbs. I got to deal with Burns. I got 3 guys. They're going to keep me up for the next 48 hours. How the hell am I going to stop these guys? If both of those guys, Thibodeau and Burns, continue an upward trend, now that's why the Giants made the deal.
Kind of a Tuck OC JPP.
Well, there you go.
Type of thing, maybe?
Because as much as Ojulari had 8 sacks as a rookie, and we wanted to believe that he could be one of those guys, he's not.
Well, he hasn't stayed healthy enough to do it.
Hasn't done it. And to be frank, okay, besides the injury factor, even last year, his efficiency was not nearly as good. He is not giving me any reason to believe that he can be a headache player. Now they've got 3 guys who really could be. That's what makes Bowen's game plan run. When he's got those headache players on the front line. It all comes off of that. If he doesn't have that, if he's only got 2, that's why they made the trade. Because if they only have 2 headache players, a lot of what he wants to run won't work as effectively. It just won't.
Paul, good stuff.
Yeah, it was fun.
For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us. Giants season tickets, guys. Go to giants.com/tickets. Individual tickets are available. You know the schedule now. Season tickets as well. Go check it out. And, of course, for all our great video content, make sure you download Giants TV, the Giants connected TV streaming app, Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, Giants mobile app. Check all of that out. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Tomorrow we're back again at 1 p.m. Dottino and Casillas preview training camp. Tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Vitamin Water is from New York. We needed a drink that can keep up with the music scene in the city. We got to see our favorite DJ perform in Brooklyn at 3 a.m. or sing karaoke in the Village, also at 3 a.m. Drink Vitamin Water. It's from New York.
Getting ready to take on spring? Make your first move with the reliable performance and power of Steel battery tools. From hedge trimmers and mowers to string trimmers and more, right now, you can save $50 on select battery tool sets. Real Steel. Offer valid on select AK system sets through June 16, 2024. See participating retailer for details.